The wait is finally over. Basketball is back, and the Boston Celtics are giving us something real to talk about. After months deconstructing trade rumors, guessing rotations, and obsessing over off-season intensity reports, we finally got a taste of action on the court as the Celtics opened their preseason with a solid win over the Memphis Grizzlies. And look, yes, it's just preseason. Yes, the Grizzlies weren't exactly rolling out their full squad. But what we saw from the Celtics was exactly what fans were hoping for: intensity, effort, experimentation, and glimpses of how deep and competitive this roster might really be. From the opening tip, Boston looked locked in. They dropped 35 points in the first quarter, pushing the pace, defending hard, and playing with a purpose. The talk we've been hearing for weeks about brutal practices, high conditioning levels, and a culture shift actually started to show itself on the floor. There was a level of seriousness and cohesion that's not always there in early October. And a lot of that is probably due to the fact that, for once, nothing is guaranteed. This roster still has open battles for rotation minutes. No one can coast right now. Everybody's got to show something. And that urgency came through clearly. The starting five for this one featured Jaylen Brown and Derek White in the backcourt, with Sam Hauser at the 3, Oshie Brissett at the 4, and Xavier Tillman anchoring the middle. No Pritchard, no Simons, and no Najee, all out for various reasons, which gave the coaching staff even more reason to experiment. But this group set the tone early. Jaylen Brown, in particular, looked like a man on a mission. In just 20 minutes, he put up 21 points on 13 shots, hit 3 triples, and got to the line 8 times. He wasn't out there coasting. He was attacking, setting the tone physically, and even got into it with a couple Memphis players. That preseason don't get hurt energy? Not for Jaylen. He brought the same fire we've heard about from practices and took it straight into game action. And it wasn't just Brown. Derek White logged 27 minutes and played the role of floor general to perfection. Sure, he only hit 2 of his 9 threes, but he ended up with a double-double, 16 points and 10 assists. He also played some solid defense, as usual, and looked comfortable handling a little more of the offense with Pritchard out. That kind of adaptability is going to be huge for Boston, especially as the regular season starts to settle in. Looking beyond the backcourt, you had Hauser doing his thing, spacing the floor and playing within the system, though he only grabbed 1 rebound. Brissett added 4 boards, and Tillman added 5 more in his 23 minutes. Not massive numbers, but together they managed to cover the glass decently, gang rebounding style. Whether that works long-term is another question, especially when it comes to playoff matchups, but for now it shows a collective buy-in that's always encouraging this early in the season. Now let's talk about Xavier Tillman for a minute. There were questions about his health heading into the year, particularly around a lingering knee issue he's been dealing with. He even said in interviews that it's still swelling, so expectations were a bit tempered. But last night, he looked bouncy. There was one alley-oop in particular, you know the one, where he rose up, caught it clean, and threw it down with authority. And let's be honest, no one remembers seeing that kind of vertical from him last season. If this is the version of Tillman the Celtics are getting, active, mobile, engaged, that's a real asset off the bench. And then there's Hugo Gonzalez. Man, what a first impression. Boston's first-round pick came out exactly as advertised. High motor, disruptive defense, and a knack for being in the right place at the right time. He finished with 3 blocks, 3 steals, and a whole lot of energy. Sure, he was a little loose with the ball at times, and he really wanted to show off those Euro steps. Maybe a bit too much, but he made things happen. Whether it was swiping the ball near mid-court or throwing down a fast break dunk, Hugo was everywhere. It's not about him becoming a 20-point scorer. It's about doing the little things, those Marcus Smart-like things, that don't always show up in the box score but help win games. And surprisingly, he also got a few on-ball reps. Point Hugo might not be a long-term plan, but hey, preseason is where you experiment. Let's get weird. Jordan Walsh only played 8 minutes before exiting with a minor adductor tweak. Doesn't seem serious, more like a precaution. But it was worth noting that Walsh was the first wing off the bench. That says a lot about how open that battle is. Along with him, Baylor Shireman and Josh Minot also got meaningful minutes. These aren't just garbage time additions. They're fighting for roles. And speaking of Minot, Celtics fans might have been a little skeptical when the team picked him up, given how little he played in Minnesota. But he made his presence known last night. Minot logged 26 minutes and stuffed the stat sheet with 7 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals, and some serious hustle. His shot wasn't falling. He went 0 for 5 from deep, but the energy was unmistakable. He's one of those chaos agents off the bench. Jay King called him an energy maven, and that's pretty accurate. He's the type of guy who comes in, wrecks a few possessions defensively, grabs a tough rebound, runs the floor, and suddenly swings the momentum in your favor. But the shooting? That's going to be the make or break. If he can at least become a threat from outside, it limits how much he can stay on the floor, especially when spacing is such a premium for this team. Now, shifting back to Shireman for a second, in 21 minutes, he dropped 13 points, grabbed 5 rebounds, dished 2 assists, and added 2 steals. He also shot 3 for 9 from deep, which isn't great, but the activity was there. This kind of stat line is exactly what Boston needs from its bench wings. Do a little bit of everything, stay active defensively, and knock down just enough shots to keep defenses honest. The one stat that really popped across the board? Steals. Practically everyone who got meaningful minutes came away with at least one. That speaks to the defensive engagement and the energy they brought as a team. Again, maybe it's just preseason, maybe the Grizzlies were shorthanded, but it's still encouraging. If Boston can maintain that kind of pressure on the ball and off it, that gives them a defensive identity that goes beyond just switching and containing. Let's give Luka Garza some love too. Not someone that fans are necessarily penciling into the rotation, but he had himself a night. 16 minutes, 10 points, 10 rebounds, and 9 trips to the free throw line. That's a double-double with a side of aggression. He's never been known for his defense, and that still remains a question mark. But offensively, Garza can get buckets. And that kind of production in limited minutes is something that earns you more looks, especially when you're trying to make a name for yourself in a deep rotation like this. So what does all this mean? Not much in the grand scheme of an 82-game season, sure. But it's a clear signal that this team is not coasting. The Celtics are approaching the preseason like it matters. Guys are fighting for spots. Roles are still up for grabs. And head coach Joe Mazzulla is not going to be afraid to shake things up. The bigger question becomes whether that openness leads to overmanaging, like pressing too many buttons. Does Joe pull the plug too quickly when someone struggles? Does he rotate too often and risk disrupting rhythm? That's something to monitor. But on the positive side, this roster is showing early signs of depth and versatility. And that could be crucial in navigating the grind of a long season. One of the biggest takeaways from this first preseason performance was just how fluid the Celtics rotation could be throughout the year. There's a real sense that Joe Mazzulla has options, not just in terms of bodies, but in styles, combinations, and tempo. This isn't one of those situations where the top 8 guys are locked in and everything else is just filler. Boston's bench is full of players who bring something unique to the table. But with that comes a different kind of challenge. Managing all these moving pieces without losing momentum or identity. That's the line Mazzulla is going to have to walk, and preseason is where he starts figuring out which buttons to push and when. The absence of Simons and Pritchard in this game might have looked like a setback on paper, but actually opened the door for experimentation. The Celtics got a chance to run different lineups, test out newer guys, and get a better look at fringe rotation players. And now, heading into the next couple of preseason games, the puzzle becomes a little more complicated in a good way. Once Simons and Pritchard are back and Najee is healthy again, the Celtics will have even more firepower to evaluate. It's going to force the coaching staff to make some tough decisions, but that's a luxury most teams would kill for. You can already see the framework forming. Jaylen Brown and Derek White are the constants in the backcourt, and they've clearly set the tone in terms of leadership and energy. When Simons and Pritchard return, you'll probably see one of them slide into that second-unit creator role, the guy who can keep the offense humming when the starters rest. Najee brings size and rim protection, and his absence gave Tillman and Garza a real opportunity to showcase their value. Garza, with his offensive punch, gives you one look. Tillman, with his defensive chops and high IQ play, gives you another. It's going to come down to matchups, health, and who shows the most consistency over the next couple of weeks. As for the wings, that's where things get really interesting. With Walsh, Hugo, Shireman, and Minot all flashing different skill sets, it's becoming clear that there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Walsh is the more traditional defender, long, athletic, and disruptive, but his offensive game is still developing. Hugo has that Marcus Smart-style energy and the ability to impact the game without needing a ton of touches. He deflects, rotates, runs the break, and just makes things happen. Shireman gives you a little bit of everything: size, rebounding, shooting, while Minot is the wild card, the guy who might not have a defined role yet, but brings an energy that's hard to ignore. They're all different, and that's the beauty of it. Depending on the matchup or the flow of the game, any of them could play real minutes. That depth and flexibility might not seem like a huge deal in October, but come January or February, it could make all the difference. The NBA season is long, brutal, and full of surprises. Players get hurt, slumps happen, and sometimes a team just needs a spark. Boston looks like a team that could generate that spark from anywhere on a roster. Whether it's a Hugo steal, a Minot tip-in, or at a Shireman corner three, these guys aren't just holding jerseys. They're giving the Celtics a real second unit with personality and purpose. Of course, all of this will get tested as the preseason progresses. Next up is a game in Toronto, and that should be a better benchmark than what we saw against a very undermanned Grizzlies squad. If the Raptors play their starters, guys like Scotty Barnes, R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and Jacob Poeltl, then we're going to get a clearer picture of where Boston stands right now. It's one thing to outrun Memphis B team. It's another to match up against a legitimate starting five. And then Sunday brings a home game against Cleveland, another team with real size and depth. These next two games are going to matter, not in terms of wins and losses, but in terms of seeing how the Celtics' intensity and structure hold up against tougher competition. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the Boston Celtics organization, sources close to the team suggest that BRISSONG has been quietly promoted, a decision that insiders say could shake the very foundation of the Celtics rotation. While the franchise has yet to confirm the news officially, whispers around TD Garden indicate that this sudden elevation of Walsh is already causing ripples in the locker room and raising eyebrows among fans and analysts alike. Walsh, a player who until recently was viewed as a developmental project, has reportedly impressed the coaching staff with his poise and ability to read the floor under pressure. However, critics argue that promoting him at this juncture could disrupt a rotation that has been carefully calibrated over the past seasons. Sources say that veteran players are adjusting on the fly, trying to accommodate what might be a permanent change in minutes allocation, while younger roster members are said to be both excited and anxious about the new hierarchy forming before their eyes. The Celtics, long known for their disciplined approach to player development, appear to be taking a calculated risk by thrusting Walsh into a more prominent role. The question on everyone's mind is whether this decision is a reaction to injuries, a reward for outstanding practice performances, or a strategic pivot by the front office aiming to inject fresh energy into a rotation that has struggled at key moments this season. Analysts are already speculating how Walsh's inclusion might affect matchups against top Eastern Conference contenders, and whether this move signals a broader trend toward youth over experience within Boston's ranks. Social media has erupted with debate as fans dissect Walsh's previous performances, highlight reels, and even locker room dynamics. While some see the promotion as a bold and inspired choice, others warn that it could backfire, leaving the team vulnerable in crunch-time scenarios. One thing is clear: BRISSONG-Walsh's rise is no longer a quiet story, and every game from here on will be scrutinized as Celtics observers attempt to gauge whether this gamble pays dividends or exposes cracks in an otherwise steady lineup. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.